when you open Gemstone, this is the interface you will see, and you have different kinds of default image sizes that you can work on. But then you can also see previous projects and previous photos that you've opened. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on File, Open, and we are going to open 2 photos just to get started. And so you will see in Gemstone your tabs, and you can have dozens of tabs, hundreds of tabs if you want it, although your computer might crash. But here's why Gemstone is great. It allows you to have all of the photos you want to work with right there, and you could even um, do a split screen right here if that's the way that you prefer to work. I prefer just looking at my main image, but if you notice on your right side, when you click on different tabs, you will see that the layers correspond to the tab that you have selected. So if I do any sort of adjustments to my image on the right, for example, I add just an exposure adjustment, reduce the exposure. If I then go to the Hot Springs tab, I won't see any of that, which I guess is very intuitive. And it's one of the things that makes Gemstone an amazing software to get started in photo editing, because this is very straightforward and intuitive, which is one of the things we really like about Gemstone. Okay, so I'm going to close. Actually, I'm going to reopen that image. And what we're going to attempt is pretty cool. And it's inspired by a collage artist. And I'm going to leave his name in the chat if you're interested in checking some of his work. And what we're going to attempt today is to make this hot spring right here, bring this arm and tea bag into our hot spring photo to make a fun collage. Or I don't know if it's a collage, but it's just like something new, something creative. And we're going to use Gemstone's tools to achieve that. So if you go to your left side menu, you will see this little square that says AI object selection. And the amazing thing about this is that you can intuitively draw your selection in your image. So let's go ahead and do that. And now I am just going to trace like this. And see what the selection does. So I just outlined with my mouse the hand and also the tea bag. And as you can see, the hand is beautifully selected. If you've just installed Gemstone, you're probably seeing the selection like this. That's the marching ants, which is one way to see your selections, but I find that it's a lot better to see them highlighted. And so once you download Gemstone, go to Select, go to Overlay Options, and click on Selection Highlighted. You can change the color and everything. And that way, everything that is selected when you either do the AI object selection or the brush selection or subject, background, sky will always be in this red overlay. So you're probably thinking, okay, but I also want the tea bag. And the great thing about the AI object selection is that we can add to the selection and also subtract from the selection. So if you look to the top left of my screen, you will see um, 4 options for the AI object selection. The new selection, which will um, basically, I'll just start a new selection, getting rid of the one I did previously. I can add to my current selection, and you can also use the Shift key on your keyboard to use that. And you can subtract from your selection. Many times when you are using this tool, you'll see that sometimes many things are selected that you wish they weren't. And so you just can, with Control or just by clicking here, you can subtract from it. And this is just a way to preview what you have selected. Okay, so let's add the tea bag. Let's see if that works. And now we have our tea bag selected. Okay, so we can be even more detailed about what we're trying to do because obviously that's what we want. And I want to select the little thread too. Is it too small for the AI object selection tool to select it? What do you guys think? Let's give it a shot. Okay, let's see if we can get the, and we can't. And that's okay, because the amount of pixels and the, the white background, it all makes it a little complicated. But the great thing about all of this is that all of the selections are, you can modify them. You can add to them, you can subtract to them with the brush tool. So on your menu right here, below the AI object selection, at the bottom, you'll see the brush selection. And with this brush, you can, with your right click on your mouse, you can remove from the selection. So we've just, I'm going to zoom out for a second. With my right click, I can subtract from that selection. And with my right click, I can add to my selection. So let's go back to 500%. And we're just going to quickly try to select the thread here. Another thing that's really cool about the brush selection is that you can select smart brushing. So what does smart brushing do? If I don't have anything selected and I drag my mouse over my image, the selection will be exactly what I drew. If I select smart brushing, and I'm going to select, so we have different kinds of smart brushing, which will make the brush sort of try to guess what you're trying to select, either by the difference in color between what you're drawing, the difference in color between what you're trying to select and whatever is around it, and also brightness. So something that's, you're selecting something that is super bright and the background of it is a little dark, then brightness is a good way to go about it. And magic is a combination of both. I always try to do magic. So now that we have magic selected, I'm going to, with my little wheel here on my mouse, I'm going to decrease the size of my brush, which you can also change the nib width and feathering right here in this little dot. And so I'm just going to start drawing downwards. And this does not have to be perfect because it's so small that even if the sides are not exactly right, we won't be able to notice. So just to make it clearer, I've now expanded my brush. And as you can see, Magic Smart Brushing does work because I am aiming right here where my thread is. And Gemstone is able to select only, or mostly only, the thread. Let's just do it once more, but do it as best as we can with my brush a little smaller. That's good enough. Okay, so now we have everything selected that we want to use for our other photo. And what I'm going to do is simply go Control Copy, Control C on my keyboard, and head to my Hot Springs tab and type Control V. I now have a new layer right on top of my background layer, which is the Hot Springs layer, with the selection I just did. And now I can start to play around with the size of this to try to make this little hot spring, but it's actually some giant T, sort of strange reality. Okay, so I've just added one selection from another image that is open right here in Gemstone. And so how can I make this like feel a lot better? Like, for example, what if I made the water of the hot spring a little more red? So like similar to um, our tea bag. In Gemstone, you, on the right side of layers, you will see a bunch of adjustment layers. And so we're going to add a color EQ layer, but we're going to try to affect only our background layer. So as you can see, I have color EQ, layer 1, and hot spring. I'm going to drag color EQ 1 and place it in between my two layers so that whatever color adjustments I make are only affecting my hot spring layer. So now that I have color EQ open, I'm going to go to hue, and I'm going to change the hue of these light blue and blue tones to see if we can make it closer to red. Probably dragging them all the way down. So there we have it. And you might be saying, wait, but the sky also changed. The sky changed, and maybe some of the trees here changed, all to a more of a reddish tone because we've changed the hue of all of our blues. And super easy way to fix that is by simply selecting the layer, the mask on your layer, your color EQ layer, and selecting the black brush. Selecting a black brush, what this will do. So are you familiar? I guess I should have asked this first. Are you familiar with how masks work and how white and black affect the mask? Okay, so most of you guys know about this, but if you don't know, what's happening here? Why is this little white rectangle right here on our layer, on our color EQ layer? Is because everything in white is being applied our color EQ selection. So we change the hue of our image, and you can see that this entire little rectangle is white. If we select our brush to the left and we select black and we start painting over the areas we don't want them to be affected by the color EQ, you will see that the layer mask to my right starts having black parts and white parts. And so all of that means is that the color EQ is only affecting what's white in my layer, in the layer mask. And you can see that more clearly now. So if you look closely, only the center of the layer mask is white. And now, if I deactivate the preview of my effect, you'll see that I'm not changing the color of the sky. I'm only changing the color of the little hot spring. So you might, something cool would be to maybe make our little tea bag be inside the hot spring. And the way we can do that is by, very similar to what we just did, is by adding a layer mask to that layer. And so if you look to here, my layers on the right side of my screen, on the bottom, you will see different options. This little square with a circle in the middle is called Add Layer Mask. What this will do is it will attach a mask onto my layer. And so just as I did before, now I can either delete or add whatever I want in that layer by using black or white. So if I do a big black stroke over that layer mask, now my hand has disappeared. But if I go back to white, then my hand has reappeared. So I'll go back to black and I'm going to zoom in right here to where the tea bag sort of supposedly touches the water. Maybe I'll zoom out so it's easier to see everything. Okay, there. And now, going to select again my brush. It's going to be in black color. And I'm going to add more feathering. So feathering, if you can see my brush, I have an inner circle and an outer circle. The inner circle is what's going to always be selected or applied as I draw over my image. And then the space in between those circles is sort of this like blurry, like that selection becomes blurry, so it becomes smoother. It'll be more obvious once I start doing this. So now I just brushed slightly on the bottom of my tea bag, and now it totally looks like the little tea bag is inside the hot spring. What else can I do to make this look better? Well, a great way to get coherence when you're working with different photos that have different uh, light to them and colors to them, and you don't want to go layer by layer trying to um, match the white balance necessarily or match certain tones. You can always add a filter or a color LUT to all of your layers, which will affect the color um, in the same ways to all of your layers. So that will help the image come together more easily. So if I go to adjustments and I click on color LUTs, you will see that a new layer of color LUTs has been added to my layer panel. So and right here, you will see the color LUT selection. So you have all kinds of LUTs, and the dusk LUT makes the image already look more vintage, which is very similar to the style of the artist we're being inspired by. Adam just did a workshop on LUTs that I recommend you guys. If you are into getting to know more how they work and how they affect your image specifically. Um, I'm not 100% if Adam already uploaded it to ACDC Connect, but if not, is you can check it out on our YouTube channel 100%. So here we go. We'll have all kinds of LUTs that really help bring our different layers together. So I'm just going to, yeah, I like film, but I'm going to reduce the effect's opacity so that it's not so obvious. So on every layer that you have in Gemstone, you can change the opacity of that effect or of that image or layer. So if I just reduce and bring it back just a little bit, 52, now I do have my color LUT affecting everything in my image. And I guess it seems like my background image is a little bit darker than my hand up there, so maybe I'll just add another exposure layer on the top of my hot spring and just bring the exposure a little bit up. There we go. To finish this off, let's add some vignetting. So again, I'm going back to my adjustments and I'm adding a vignette to all of my photo. I can change the strength of the vignette. I wanted it to be a little subtle. The distance from the center and the shape, more round or more elliptical. So that's before my vignette and after my vignette. So there we have it. This is an example of how easy it is to play around with your imagination and play around with different images. I don't know. If you are a bird photographer, you could, for example, open, let's say, a session of you took up, you took like 20 photos of a bird in a moment, and you can open all of those 20 photos here and maybe select your bird and create a new canvas, a black or white canvas, and add all of the photos of your bird. And so it allows you to create new images, right? It's not only about editing photos that you already took, it's about creating something new. So yeah, are you guys, let me know, are you guys into composite photography? Is it something that you've tried, that you are interested in? Type 0 if you're not really interested and you're just like looking how to improve photos you take. Type 1 if you're open to maybe enhancing photos by adding different layers. Cool. Yeah. So this example is yeah, this is an extreme example, right? I mean, the image we've just edited is not possible in real life, but it's pretty cool that we're able to nice. That's great, Norm. Um, so why don't we try to do something else? Also, if you guys have any questions, just please leave them in the comments. Maybe we'll open this one. Maybe the birds. Okay, let's see. I think I have one more. Okay. So I have clouds. I have this cool city skyline. I have birds. I'm just going to close our other photo that we've just created. All right. So I look at this photo and I'm like, huh, it would be really cool if we could sort of draw more attention to these two buildings that I have right in front of me with this beautiful golden top here and this black, more office building to the right. And so maybe I can add some birds to this photo. Maybe I can add a little bit of clouds. So why don't we just start by treating this image? And what I'm going to try to do is just, right, yeah, just make these two buildings stand out. So probably, what happens if I do select subject? This is going to be an experiment. Probably won't work, but let's see what ACDC does. Might not be able to detect. Oh, okay. Right. So it's sort of thinking like I'm thinking. The subject is somewhere in between these two buildings, and that's pretty awesome that it did that. Um, I'm going to select my brush here, and I'm already noticing that there's some selections here on buildings that I'm not super interested in enhancing. So with the right click of my mouse, I'm going to click on all of these little like red areas that I don't want to work with, because I only want to select these two buildings right here. So this did a pretty cool selection of some parts of these buildings, but I can add to it with the AI object selection. So I just selected subject and it chose what it could. And now I'm just going to add to it with the AI object selection. So maybe what happens if I do this? Let's see. Okay, better. If this happens to you, and it will, specifically when you're dealing with images like this, like there's clearly not such an easy way for the program to detect, because our background is, everything is sharp in this photo and it's super intricate. It's not, most of the examples that you see, it's super easy to separate the subject from the background, or like it's more straightforward because there's depth of field, because there's blurriness. Here we're dealing with a situation where we don't have that. So how can we work with the how can we work with Gemstone to really select everything? And so it's good. We tried select subject, we try adding it with AI object selection, but now we're going to improve all of this selection by using, oh, by using our brush. Oh, there we go. Control Z. So I'm going to quickly deselect with the right click of my mouse parts that I don't want. And with the left side of my mouse, I'm going to go over the buildings a little bit more too. Okay, so we're going to select this guy here as well. By simply brushing on top. There we go. So now, thanks for joining, Luis. Let's go back. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see what we're doing more clearly. So now that I have my two buildings selected, what I'm going to do is copy this selection and paste it on top of my background. So just by hitting Control C and then Control V, I have another layer on top of my background that has those buildings. And so if I add an exposure layer in between those other layers, just as we did before, and I reduce the exposure, we're immediately starting to see a nicer separation between those two buildings that are what we're trying to work with and the background. So this is how it looked before and how it looks after. If you want to continue editing the selection, go ahead and add. Let's see. Oh, go ahead and add another mask, because I can see that I'm selecting some parts of the building in the back that I don't want. So I'm just going to right here, clean my black building selection right there. What else can we do? We can try to blur that background a little bit too to create more separation. So let's see. And that's definitely a lot. And I'm just going to bring it down. Just 5, very minimum. Maybe it's slightly more. Maybe I can add a little bit of contrast to my two buildings that are my main subjects. So I will add another exposure layer, but I'm going to clip it. So this is something else that's super important when you're doing this kind of work. Sometimes you'll find yourself, I only want to apply a layer adjustment to this layer right here. And if I start messing around with the exposure, you'll see that it's being applied to all of my photo. And I don't want that. So you clip it. And what does that mean is that by clicking this rhomboid icon here, it will become this little arrow that's pointing to the layer below it. What that does is that now our exposure layer is only being applied to the layer that's immediately below it. So if I now start moving the exposure, you will see that it's only working on those two buildings. So I'm just going to add a little contrast. Maybe it's too much. There. So why don't we see what we had before? This was our original photo, which we've now transformed into this. Let's try to do the same things we did before. So let's try, for example, maybe bringing the birds. And now my birds are selected in red. I'll do Control C, Control V. And you'll see that immediately my birds have been added to the photo. So someone did ask about committing. When you're adding a layer, it's true. You do have to sort of give the okay for it to be added. So yeah, I guess that is really important if you whenever you're incorporating layers into your image. So maybe just trying to make this look a little bit better. Okay, that looks interesting. I added more blur. And I can still see a little bit of my background here. Or I can still see some of the selection behind the black building. Whoa. Okay, so that's better. Okay, so we've added some birds, and something I would always recommend when you're adding you know, layers to photos is to reduce the opacity a little bit. So and not too much, but a little bit so that it's able to blend more. Like that maybe. And now, what if we try adding clouds? This is something you'll come across many times where you're working with with an image where the size of the document is very, very different. And this cloud overlay that I just added is a lot lower in resolution. And if I increase the size of it, you will see it's starting to look pixelated, very pixelated, but it might still work. So let's give it a shot. So I'm going to go hit commit. And now I'm like, okay, well, I see my clouds, but I don't see anything else. When you search for overlays on Google Images or wherever you get photos um, or images, overlays work usually like this. So there's very strong blacks and very strong whites. And what we need to do is to change right here next to opacity. We need to change from normal to screen if we want the blacks to be transparent and the whites or grays to be more visible. So multiply, and then you can explore what all of these do. There's overlay. So I just change the blending mode from normal to screen on with my clouds here. And I reduce the opacity so that it's not so obvious. But I'm also going to reduce the exposure because they need to be a little darker. I'm going to clip the mask and reduce the exposure to make them a little darker. Maybe I can move my birds a little bit. And now we've just created a new composite image from what we've had by incorporating different layers into the project, by incorporating objects from other photos that we have open. Um, and that is why Gemstone is such a great tool to do this kind of work and to experiment. So yeah, we can again finish this off by maybe adding a color LUT and some vignetting. So let's see what this does to our image. That's a cool one. I guess the bird should be smaller. Film. Now this has Batman vibes. Yeah, the birds are too big. Yeah, so we've created this pretty kind of interesting cinematic, and I'm going to add a little bit of vignetting. So, obviously, this is on the verge of, I mean, it's not really realistic, but we're able to, explore. Let's go back. Let's deactivate all of our layers and see what we did. So we went from that. Let's go over step by step what we did to make this work. So first, we brought the exposure down. Now, then we have a blurred layer. We separated our buildings. We changed the exposure of those buildings. Oops, here we go. Wait, that's too much. We added birds. We added a cloud overlay, changed the exposure of the clouds, added a color LUT, and added some vignetting. That's a good question, Antoine. So you can do this in Ultimate. However, you cannot have different images open like how we have here and do, for example, the AI object selection, which is the way we selected the birds, and do Control C and then apply Control V right in the image that we have to the left. And that's the biggest difference. But most of the stuff you can do in edit mode in AC/DC. So if you have AC/DC, then you might just stick to that and be able to work by opening one photo at a time. But again, there's something about having all of your images open at the same time and having a more streamlined menu without the digital asset management capabilities of AC/DC so that your photo editing can be more straightforward. Oh, and one last thing. So, because I did mention it in the beginning, and with this we will, yeah, you're right, Clayton. It's a little tricky to make compositions in Ultimate. It's just not designed for that. And Gemstone is 100% designed to make composites. And we're adding a lot of stuff, but honestly, you don't have to add so much to your photos to make them stand out more, which is great. I'm just going to show AC/DC RAW, which is basically develop mode in Gemstone. So let me know if you can see AC/DC RAW. Okay, thanks, Antonio. So same as we have in develop mode in professional and ultimate, you can open your raw images in Gemstone and create the same adjustments that you can do there. So we have all of the same mask types that we can create. We can select our subject, AI select our subject. So now you can see our subject is selected by clicking the show mask, and we can add more AI masks like select background, which is the opposite, and select sky. And so we can start playing around with only the sky, with the background, maybe reduce some of the saturation in the background, try to make this like image more dreamlike. So what I've done is I've just been reducing the saturation in my sky and in my background, and maybe I can add a little bit more contrast in my subject, but also reduce its saturation a little bit, reduce the clarity, actually reduce clarity in my background too. There. So that's my original photo, and that is the processing that I did just by using the AI masking options that are available in AC/DC RAW. That's a good question. The main improvements in Gemstone 12 and 14 is we've added AI object selection tool. We've improved all of the AI actions. We added AI face edit. If you really are interested, I'm going to leave the Gemstone video on what's new so that you can check it out. There I go into a detailed explanation of everything that's new in Gemstone. Right here. Oh, sorry. Everyone. There we go. That's the link if you are interested. And yeah, just go to the Gemstones also product page. So there's the AI sky replacement, which we didn't actually have time to look here. It's exactly the same tool as the sky replacement in Ultimate, which is an amazing tool. It has so many options to really change your sky and edit it in ways that are super detailed. We have AI face edit in the new Gemstone. We also have panoramic stitching. We have improved the photo merge feature in Gemstone 14. So a lot has been added to Gemstone 14 to really, to me, it's just honestly one of the best photo editors out there. I know that it's coming from someone who works for AC/DC, but it's great. It's easy to use. It's fast. Um, and with the new version of it is absolutely great. All the stuff that you can do. Howard, please check the video link that I just added on the chat. I do go into the face edit a little bit there. And if not, just check out other face edit videos because it's the same tool as an AC/DC Photo Studio. So any other video on face edit, Gemstone works exactly the same. Well, so that's a wrap. Thank you guys for joining the workshop today. I'll see you guys next time. Enjoy your weekend.